Greetings to dear Mrs. Rajavi, the President-elect of the Iranian Resistance, and greetings to Mr. Masoud Rajavi. Greetings to all of you, dear guests. My name is Amineh, the daughter of slain teacher Mehdi Qaraii, one of the 30,000 political prisoners who sacrificed their lives for freedom in the 1988 massacre. I was only one when my father was arrested. 2 months later, my mother and I were also arrested and taken to the Revolutionary Guards Vakilabad prison in Mashhad. Despite being a child, I spent some months among the tortured prisoners. After my mother's interrogations and torture were over, I was sent out of prison to live with my grandparents. From then on, I was able to visit my parents only once a week, for a few minutes, and from behind a thick and gloomy prison window. Finally, after 2 years, my mother, and after 4 years, my father returned home. For the first time at the age of 5, I was able to cherish the moment of being with my parents. But unfortunately, that wonderful feeling did not last long. Only 10 days after my brother was born in 1986, Revolutionary Guards stormed our house and took my father away for simply receiving a telephone call from a friend abroad. He was arrested and sentenced to 5 years prison. And it all starts all over again. The dark days of prison. Long tunnels of the prison's waiting room and short visits from behind the glass. And the countdown to the day when my dad will be freed began. The summer of 1988. I was 8. Suddenly, the few minutes long visits on Wednesdays Suddenly, the few minutes long visits on Wednesdays were stopped. All prisoners were refused visits. We had no information of our loved ones, nor what was going on inside prisons. 3 months non-stop every week, we stood there in front of the prison for hours, but still no news from our loved ones. Under the hot summer sun, our hearts filled with anxiety and anguish, but still no answer. We sat without getting any answer from the prison guards nor Revolutionary Guards. Everyone was anxious, and you could see the worry in everyone's eyes, but no one dared to speak in fear of what might be happening behind those walls. November 1988 arrived, and it was then that I was told my father was executed. The regime threatened and intimidated us so that we wouldn't hold a ceremony. But how was it possible to prevent the people who wanted to find any opportunity to commemorate their loved ones? I remember one day when I entered my grandfather's house and witnessed my dad's picture beside 2 candles and saw rows of mourning women all dressed in black. I shouted, "Don't cry for my father. He is alive and is in heaven." My mother started to name the fathers and mothers of my friends who had also been executed in the massacre. She wanted to teach me that we're not alone in this massive sadness, and that the massacre was more than conceivable. Following news of the executions, everyone started asking questions, and the search for their loved ones began. Where are their bodies? Where are they buried? Why were we denied our final farewell with them? We went to the largest cemetery in the city. We heard that at the end of Mashhad's Behesh Zahra, the same place where a few martyrs were buried in the start of the 1980s, mass graves were found. The gravedigger told my close relative that he witnessed with his own eyes that bodies of prisoners dressed in prison clothes were dumped by trucks in deep holes, and bulldozers were used to cover the mass graves. میادگاه خانواده ها می شود بهشت رضای مشهد. Mashhad's Behesh Zahra Cemetery became the meeting point of families. Despite high security presence, families enthusiastically made their way to be by their loved ones who were laying there after being slain in the climax of their youth or adolescence. They transformed the cemetery into a garden of flowers. They planted flowers and trees. But the next week, agents of the regime would destroy the flowers and burn the trees. They were even afraid of the soil in which our loved ones were buried in, or the flowers placed on their graves. The world has never known what has happened to our loved ones in the notorious dungeons of the regime, and what we, families of the slain, endured. Our cries were never heard, but today, after 28 years, thanks to the endless efforts of the resistance to expose the regime's crimes in the last 38 years, crimes which have continued to date by a regime which does not tolerate any form of dissent. I'm standing here today on behalf of all mothers and fathers, on behalf of all the children and wives and husbands of those slain in 1988 to cry for justice. I am here to say that we will never forget nor will forgive. I am standing here to say I am proud of my father and of the path he chose to step in. I am proud of my father and all the fallen for freedom who chose to die in dignity instead of living in shame. And I am proud of all those who resisted until their last breath.
و تا آخرین نفس ایستادگی کردن. من امروز اینجا ایستادم.
I am here standing in front of you today to urge the international community to bring the perpetrators of this horrible massacre to justice and to end human rights violations in Iran. Thank you very much.